There's that old cliche of, oh, we're all a family here, we're one big happy family, ooh, family, with nearly every team situation. The cast of a hit television programme, the office that people work in, Strictly Come Dancing, the cast of a travelling theatre show, and Formula 1. But sometimes there comes that moment where the family is broken apart because of some infighting amongst the team, because of one driver going into business for himself, such as Malaysia 2013 or any of the other stuff involving Mark Webber and Red Bull, because the team is going backwards, such as Hamilton with McLaren, or because you've got two drivers that desperately want a world title, like Mercedes between 2014 and 2016. Or you've got a family broken apart because one of the drivers had his brother turn up in a not so happy mood. And that's what happened at the 1998 Belgian Grand Prix. Now, I cover the race in full as one of the first ever episodes of this series, but what I want to do today is focus on the final kind of quarter of the race here and the aftermath, because we all remember three things from this Grand Prix. The opening lap pile-up, the incident involving Coulthard and Schumacher, and the eventual winner of the race. Because in that original video, I kind of felt like it was just glossed over, and since the 25th anniversary of the race has just rolled round, it feels as good a time as any to go into some more details, because it's one of those things you read about online where people have got the wrong end of the stick. So then a quick recap. The Belgian Grand Prix of 1998 was just wet. Very wet. It's one of those races where you would occasionally see part of a car and then plume of spray behind. And it's actually a good thing that the cars of that time were painted very bright colours, thanks in part to tobacco sponsorship. So you could see the sky blue Benetton, the scarlet Ferrari, the yellow Jordan, and so on. And in the opening 30 seconds or so, carnage when David Coulthard dropped his car on a drain cover of all things and spun across the track and then caused a 13-car pile-up. While this would have meant a restart with only 7 cars starting again today, in those days teams had spare cars where the driver could get into one of those, or the only one because it was just a one, and take the restart. Unless you were one of the teams that had 2 cars involved, obviously. At the start, Hakkinen tussled with Schumacher, spun round, and then got hit by Herbert, which took him out of the race, while Hill in the Jordan went into the lead with Schumacher behind. Michael eventually caught and passed Hill and then went off to what seemed like an easy win. That is, until lap 25 when Michael came round to lap the McLaren of Coulthard, and in a bit of confusion between the two as they headed down the hill towards Pouhon, Coulthard lifted to let Schumacher by, but Schumacher went to go out around, pulled back in a bit, and then at the last second saw the McLaren, by which time it was too late. So he turned his Ferrari into a reliant Robin. So this put Damon in a Jordan into the lead, much to the delight of one Murray Walker on the commentary, while the TV audiences were treated to a very irate Schumacher storming up the pit lane towards the McLaren garage, where he was ready to lay the smackdown on Coulthard, which has one of my favourite lines ever attributed to it. If we had resorted to fisticuffs, I would have used the head in Scottish, and given him the Glasgow kiss. Jason Plato would also use this tactic when Matt Neal threatened to kick his head in at Rockingham back in 2011. Don't fight someone who has a helmet on, it's not good for your fists. So we're back on track for the ending of this Grand Prix. After Schumacher was eliminated, some say deliberately, but you know what fans can be like, Fisichello's race was ended when he smashed into Nakano at the bus stop and that caused a safety car. So with 6 cars left in the race, it meant that you just had to finish to score, but with Ralph up the back of Damon with less than 5 laps remaining, Damon got on the radio. I'm going to put something to you here, and I think you better listen to this. If we two race, we can end up with nothing, so it's up to Eddie. If we don't race each other, we've got an opportunity to get first and second. It's your choice. Now this is Eddie Jordan we're talking about. This is a man that would have known the bigger picture, beyond what's going on track. Eddie had Mugen and Benson and Hedges breathing down his neck. Jordan had not had the best of seasons with the drivers they had, with neither car scoring a single point in the first half of the season. It wasn't until the 9th race of the season, Silverstone, when Ralph scored a point, and then Damon scoring his first points with 4th in Germany. This happening after Mike Gascoigne replaced Gary Anderson and the car brought a lot of upgrades. Benson and Hedges and Mugen were probably also thinking that this was a team with the 1996 champion driving and had been signed to huge fanfare and a lot of money. So where were the results? Ralph also apparently didn't like that Damon was the number 1 driver and being favoured, which meant the relationship between Ralph and Jordan was already in the pan, because Ralph had been there for, a season and a half at this point, and here comes this other guy and they're favouring him. So EJ had to make a very tough decision. He told Sam Michael to tell Ralph not to overtake Damon. The message took a little while to get through, either because it was edited to look that way, because Ralph was concentrating on not stacking it, or because Ralph's face was the same colour as what was left of his brother's Ferrari. But from Eddie's point of view, it was business. Business he needed at the time due to prize money and sponsorships and all that stuff. And when you think about it, maybe Eddie was right to do what he did. So let's look at the reasons why Eddie did it. Maybe we could call it the real reasons in the title, or the truth behind. No. Number 1. There were 6 cars left running, with McLaren and Minardi scrambling to get Coulthard and Nakano back out so they could mop up a point or two if 1 or 2 cars dropped off, and the Jordan was the fastest of all of those cars left. Out of the 14 non-finishers, which includes the non-starters of Barrichello, Panis, Salo and Rosset, all but 2 of those, Verstappen and Tuero, had retired due to the weather, spinning off or hitting someone or something. And actually the best part of that opening pileup was the fact that Rosset had gone full iRacing yellow flag mode and just, well, Ricky Bobbied it. Foot to the floor and, yeah, I can make it through. He didn't make it through. As Damon said, if we race we could end up with nothing. It would take one or both of them getting it wrong in those conditions to wipe themselves out of contention and give the win to a lazy and Sauber instead. Now, contrary to what some have been saying in comments all over the place, Damon has not said at any point, either covertly or overtly, if he tries to race me or having us both off. And I fail to see how people have extracted that from the radio message. But then again, Damon is very blunt at times. Spa was also where Jordan scored its first ever pole position in 1994. It's also the circuit where Ralph's brother made his debut for that same team. The stars were aligning. Eddie could make that pole position a win at the same track. Factor in as well that the Rainmaster in Michael Schumacher had been involved in an accident. Okay, an accident that was 90% the fault of the guy he actually hit, but it's a factor. So if Michael Schumacher could be wiped out in these conditions, anybody could. So you can imagine Eddie's thinking, if they stay as they are, they're at less risk of crashing. If they crash, I look stupid for not telling them to knock it off. If they finish 1-2, I look like a feckin' genius and or a hero. Mugen's happy, Benson's are happy, we're happy. So they're going to stay as they are. I want this win. I've got the fastest cars on track right now because everybody else is in the garage. As it was, Jordan finished 1-2, and it wasn't just the sponsors on EJ's end that were happy. Everybody was. Jordan, the plucky underdog, the one that had always punched above its weight, had finally won a race. And a 1-2 at that, in conditions where virtually everybody else had slid off or hit someone. Only Tuero and Verstappen had retired through mechanical failures. It wasn't without its issues though, because Formula 1 didn't have the Irish national anthem to hand, so they played God Save the King, well, Queen as it was then for Damon, and just played that one anthem, which probably didn't go down well. The rule with anthems is, if the winning driver is the same nationality as the team, they play the anthem just once. So when Button won with Brawn or McLaren or whatever, they just played it once so we don't have to hear it twice. And if there's one thing I've learned through watching Formula 1 for about 30 years, it's the German national anthem. Oh, and that version of God Save the Queen they played that day was the slowest rendition I've ever heard. Petition to change the British national anthem to Park Life. Eddie was annoyed but found the silver lining in it all. They knew we were registered and affiliated to the FIA as an Irish team, and that it was their obligation to play our national anthem, but they said they couldn't find it. And not having won a race before, it's easy to understand why it might not have been top of the pile. Same thing happened to Red Bull when they won their first race. They played the German anthem for Seb, and then God Save the Queen despite Red Bull being an Austrian registered team. So everybody was happy for EJ and co, but there was still one man out there that was ready to fight anyone and anyone, like those old-timey boxers that you see parodied on Family Guy or something, and that was the man they call the Michael. He started off by fighting with DC, which was perfect, and left us alone, and then he came to me after the race and I thought he was going to put his arms around me and say, "Look, I'm so happy for you, you've won first and second, it's remarkable when we started here those 7 or 8 years previously." But no, that's not Michael. Michael wanted to shout and roar at me. He was swearing at me and I could swear with the best of people, so I started pushing him. He pushed me and he was saying, "That's it, you're never going to have my brother next year." So Eddie basically explained that Ralph was under this thing called a contract, and if Michael wanted his brother back, he had to pay the release clause. $2.5 million it was, as F1 used dollars as a universal currency before switching to euros later on. Nobody walked out of the Jordan door without being paid for it, Eddie told Peter Windsor. In this case, it was Michael Schumacher, and it was my way of getting back at him for years. I guess referring to how EJ lost Michael to Benetton after just one race in 1991. And the best part is, Ralph went to Williams and won fuck all, while I got Frentzen in return, who won 2 races and finished 3rd in the championship. It gave me one hell of an erection. That part is paraphrased, the important parts are there, but I can't find the original interview. Belfast Telegraph, Irish Guardian, something similar, it's out there somewhere and I just cannot find it, but it was a great interview, what I read and remember. On the 1st of September 1998, a press release was sent out saying that Ralph had been released from his contract and was on his way to pastures new. As mentioned, Williams swapped Frentzen for Ralph and Jordan ended up the better team for it, which gave EJ some satisfaction, we'll call it. But the entirety of the 1998 Belgian Grand Prix is one of those race weekends where you know it's just one of those events that will be brought up time and time again. Because of the carnage that ensued, the controversy surrounding it, the behind the scenes stuff afterwards, and the fact that the race did contribute to the end result of the season. Schumacher and Hakkinen both no-scored. Had Michael picked up the 10 points, the final race at Suzuka might have looked a lot different, as Schumacher would have had 96 points to Mika's 90 going in. But that just assumes that everything went the way it turned out. But it would have put the pressure on Mika, not Michael, in that final race. So then a look at the contract dispute and behind the scenes fighting at the 1998 Belgian Grand Prix. If this has been new for you, then do like the video, and for more like this get subscribed with the bell on so you never miss out. Massive thanks as ever to the channel members and patrons, and if you want to support me at a more personal level, there's all the relevant links in the description and under this video, as well as links to Discord and socials in the description too. Or the super thanks if you just want to do a one-off tip. So until next time, I've been Millward, have a great day wherever you are, and goodbye.